Hello there, Drew Hanish of Whiskey Lore, and time for another Whisky Tasting. I am going to Scotland on this one for two 12-year-old whiskies. One comes from the Speyside region, the other one comes from the Highlands region. Of course, Speyside is in the Highlands region, but it is its own separate place. And within Speyside, which is where most of the whiskey comes from out of Scotland, you have Dufftown, which Dufftown is the spot within Speyside where the largest percentage of whiskey comes out of Speyside. So we're talking about 6 distilleries in the area, just a couple of them that you can tour. 10% of the whiskey that comes out of Scotland comes out of Dufftown. So those 6 distilleries push out a lot of whiskey. And one of those distilleries is Mortlach. Actually, I'm going to show you the box. It comes in this really nice little box here with a presentation, and everything you wanted to know about Mortlach is on here. I have not been to the distillery. It's not one that you can tour. So it's one that I've seen from the outside and walked to. I actually parked at Glenfiddich and then walked up through Dufftown, got myself a nice coffee because it was cold that particular day. It wasn't raining on me, but it was cold. And then I walked down to see the outside of the Mortlach distillery. And as you'll see on this particular box, this talks about their distilling process. You'll notice that it says that it's 2.81 times distilled. And you're saying, okay, wait a second. How do you come up with a fraction of distillation? Well, if you look at this little grid, you'll see that there are 6 stills. There are 3 wash stills, 3 pot stills, and there is a barrel. And that barrel means that what they're doing is they're basically marrying together, they're redistilling again, and it's a secret formula. It's like Coca-Cola. You're not going to know exactly how they came up with that 2.81 times distilled, but it's just what they do. It's how they differentiate themselves from every other whiskey out there. Does it make a difference? I don't know. So the Wee Witchie, you'll also see that name here. You'll know the Wee Beastie from Ardbeg, and Wee meaning small. Wee Witchie is the smallest of pot stills that they have there. It's one of the smallest in Scotland. And what's interesting about their setup is that they have all different sizes for their pot stills. What will happen is, in their wash stills, a lot of distilleries will try to match them up and get them as close to each other as possible. But the secret formula here is to mix it up and do something a little bit different. Now, talking about doing something a little bit different, this is also 43.4% ABV. You'll notice that we're getting into a lot of fractions here. I don't know why. Maybe they like us doing math while we're sipping on a whiskey. But it got me thinking, because I looked at the back of this bottle, and it says on the back, it gives you all of the nutritional information, because we whiskey drinkers definitely want to know the nutritional details about the whiskey that we're drinking. And this one, as I was looking at it, it got me doing some math. And the math I was doing was, it says that there are 17 servings per container, and that is 1.5 fluid ounces or 44 milliliters, and that you get 106 calories. So I did the math, and that works out to 1,802 calories for this entire bottle of Mortlach. Compare that, calorie counters, to a Burger King Whopper combo, large, means large fry, large Coca-Cola, is going to be about 1,260 calories. So you could basically drink 2/3 of this bottle, or you could have a Burger King Whopper combo. We're going to find out. I have a feeling this is going to win in that contest. But it costs a little bit more than a Burger King Whopper combo. A little bit about Mortlach, by the way, because it is a mystery. You're not going to be able to go tour it, and so you're not going to hear their history. But they, 1823, started in 1823, which was the year that the excise law was passed, which opened up distilling in the Highlands. And so they were probably doing some illicit distilling prior to that. But it is actually the oldest distillery in Dufftown. The Glenfiddich is 1886, I think, and Balvenie is 1892. So it is definitely the oldest of those three. You get some really nice fruits on the nose on this whiskey. It has a nice berry scent coming out of it. A little of that apple and sort of a baking cinnamon that comes in there. You get a hint of warehouse in there, like a tobacco warehouse. And it's interesting, this doesn't actually say on the bottle, it does say on the packaging, on the box, that they use a combination of European oak and American oak. Not sure if the European oak or American oak are first fill, virgin, what they may be. But, ooh, that cinnamon actually just popped right out at me right there. But I think that's where some of that kind of warehousey smell is coming from. This has an excellent mouthfeel to it. Nice, not too heavy. Toffee flavor in there, a little bit of, you get a little bit of sour and some of the tannin that comes through on the finish, but it's not off-putting at all. It lets you know that you just drank some alcohol. And then there's some toffee that comes through on the finish, and that apple starts pulling through again. It's kind of dry. It's not overly sweet, but it's not excessively dry. It's nice. There's a little hint of red hot there on the finish. And the package actually tells you to add some water to it or ice. Now, there will be some Scotch fans who are like, ice? I started out drinking Scotch on the rocks, so I can't really complain about that. I don't really do that much anymore. Bourbon on the rocks will happen, but Scotch on the rocks doesn't tend to happen too often. It didn't really change the nose, but it seemed to open the fruit up just a little bit more, but it's also kind of killing off the body of the whiskey a little bit. I would probably be fine drinking that without diluting it. It'll give you a different experience when you do, slightly different, but I think I tend to like that as is without adding the water in. All right, so the second whiskey we're going to look at and taste is Glenmorange's the Lasanta. Now, when I see that name, the Lasanta, and you see that name, the Lasanta, what do you think the origin of that is? See, I would think this is aged in American oak and then it's finished in sherry casks. So I would almost think that that's a Spanish word. Maybe Italian, but probably Spanish. It's not. It's Scots Gaelic, and so it means warmth and passion. Warmth and passion. So let's see if the whiskey, which is a 12-year, 43% ABV, is warm and passionate. Wow. This one, actually, the two scents that stand out above everything else is the nuttiness of the oak and an alcohol smell, which is a little shocking. Now, these are done in the tall swan neck stills, tallest in Scotland, as they claim, which usually creates a lighter whiskey. And if you've ever had Glenmorange 10, you know, I mean, it is just a really nice light whiskey. Now, I recently had the Quinta Reuben, which is excellent. I really enjoy that, and I need to get a bottle and do a tasting on here at some point of that. I can't get past the alcohol and oak. It has a lighter mouthfeel to it. There's a sweetness that comes in. It has a little of that toffee too, but more I'm tasting like a cherry. I'm tasting a little bit of that oak. It's just a little bitter that kind of lingers on the palate as you're going through this sort of slow and even decay of the finish. The cherry is still there a little bit. It doesn't pack as much of a huge flavor to it, and it is dry. It's not necessarily, there's no sweetness really coming through on this. Yeah, the toffee's really there. Maybe a little bit of pear in there, and that cherry. And then a lot of dark notes at the end. But I think a lot of them are attached to the wood and the age of the whiskey. It's interesting. It's a much drier whiskey between these two. And the mouthfeel is right there in the middle. It's not a nice milky mouthfeel like Mortlach is. Interesting. When I initially did the pairing on these two, I wasn't sure what I was going to put up against Mortlach, because the first time I tasted it, I was like, I don't know, I'm not getting a whole lot out of this. But the more I've enjoyed it, and maybe this is all about the neck pour, as I've enjoyed this more, I've gotten more into it. So either my palate's getting used to it, and I'm really starting to dissect a lot more out of it, or it's just a very interesting whiskey, and one definitely worth exploring. The Lasanta, I say that's a really good whiskey, probably is my second whiskey of the night when I'm with friends and we're getting into a really good conversation, and you want something that's not going to get in the way of your conversation and that people will still be impressed enough by when you pour some for them. But between original and the Quinta Reuben, I don't know. I would go with one of those probably, other than the Lasanta. But it all depends on what you're into at that particular time. So, and maybe you will find some flavors in this that have escaped me. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and leave comments, subscribe if you want to see more videos and see me taste other things, and also give you a little bit of history or background on the whiskeys. And until next time, cheers and slán